For the occasion of the Data Privacy Week, the PMI Malta Chapter is happy to have this interview with Mr. Dino Conti. Dino is a professional cybersecurity manager. He has a long experience in ICT, and he will tell us more about himself.
Thank you,
Dino,
Zina.
welcome.
Pleasure
Nice
to
have
see
you.
you.
Same here. Can you tell us a bit about your background and your current role in cybersecurity?
Sure. So, first of all, I started in my first job, it was IT support. It was in cybersecurity at that point in time, but slowly, I was, first of all, learning a lot about different setups, networks, even hotel systems. Jumping on my first job really in IT, it was also on Apple computers and printers. But then I managed to get into more on ISP side of things, Linux, Windows, domain controllers, mail servers, DNSs, and all the other services. And then working with other professionals in the field and moving more into complex setups, more detailed applications, databases, enterprise setups as well. And finally, seeing the light where there were issues, for example, virus infections, or a company lost all its data. What are they going to do because of a ransomware attack or possibly human error or hardware failure? And that is where cybersecurity or information security jumps in, because you're protecting the company data, you're making sure that the data is available when they need it, making sure the systems are resilient and redundant, so even if one goes faulty, they switch on to another server, and making sure that the systems are more secure nowadays, because hacking, criminals, and cyber activity is always increasing, and they never stop. So from our side, it's protecting what is important, critical services, data, and companies to keep running, while at the other end, we've got the hackers and criminals who are always bombarding with their attacks. That's always a challenge, always trying to see what are they doing, how can we protect better our systems and our servers, what other policies, for example, can we introduce to help the users to be prepared or do the right thing. For example, should they use an 8-character password nowadays or a 20-character password? Or should they have MFA enabled, multi-factor authentication with their mobile? So these are all additional things which are being introduced. Okay, it may be annoying for the users at first, but it's important to protect the company assets and accounts, because the attacks are from different areas. Some could be directly towards the data, some could be towards the social media account, for example, reputation-wise. So it's a different approach and different controls you can implement in the systems.
So I know how passionate you are about the cybersecurity, and I think it shows in your introduction. You actually inspired me to learn cybersecurity when we worked together. But I want to ask you, why cybersecurity? What inspired you to take this role?
It's the challenge, I think. It's the challenge and the feeling that you're doing something right, helping different organizations, different people, even sometimes if it's just recovering data from a broken computer. It might not be cybersecurity per se, but knowing the tools and being able to recover data from an unrecoverable hard disk, it gives me that challenge, which makes me feel proud then when I do it. Especially then when you're working on enterprise solutions, it's securing large solutions, making sure that it's all redundant, all scalable, that the applications are working and tested, finding vulnerabilities myself. So this is also a personal challenge. Like, okay, can I tweak something and break it? So because if I can do it, criminals are going to use it against us as well. So it's always trying to learn more and what can be used by them against us and protecting.
Very interesting. So today we're having this interview for the Data Privacy Week, and I want to focus on data privacy. Do you agree that data privacy is more important than ever now, and why?
Interesting, yes. Data privacy is super important now, because most of our data is now online. It's in some server somewhere, some system somewhere, and even if you don't like it or not, it's probably stored in a server or a computer, waiting there and possibly being exfiltrated or damaged or used against us. Right? It would be used against us by showing off, for example, that I have an injury or that I did an insurance claim which I didn't want to tell anybody else about, for example. Or it could be even my passwords, because they are stored online. Having access to my passwords gives you access to all my accounts. Then the same sensitive data, for example, my accounts, my information about other companies, for example, or solutions. It's in confidential data which shouldn't be leaked out or damaged, because if they need it, you need the original data, not corrupt data. And without, for example, health data or insurance data, that is very, very sensitive. Personal data, which is private, which should be available to the patient and the doctor only, and not exposed and being used against us, because you don't want to get a leak and finding yourself on the media that you had an operation and now everybody knows about it, for example, or you have a condition and now it's public, because that's private data. So there's a lot of sensitive data, passwords, accounts, maybe even photos and videos, which are stored on your mobile devices and finish in the cloud. And then somebody leaks that data out and suddenly all that data is public. Maybe you don't want to show them that you were at a party or somewhere and what you were doing.
And I agree that it's sometimes overwhelming even for individuals to understand the data privacy risk in our daily life. But if we think about the organizations, do you think organizations and professionals fully understand data privacy?
It might be not always. However, I believe now that the GDPR is in place, it's been in place quite some years now, there's more concern and more knowledge. So at least before it was more relaxed, everybody, we use the service and that you don't ask questions. But nowadays, even the clients ask questions themselves. Okay, where is my data stored? Is it in the EU or in the US or somewhere else? What is the retention period? How is it encrypted or stored? If I lose everything, how can I restore it back? So it's becoming more known, especially the kids nowadays are more tech savvy. So they can ask these questions and understand better what services they are using and how protected their data is. However, yes, you might still find, some cowboys or heroes who want to launch a product that they didn't do the proper testing, and then they realized after 2 weeks that they have a big breach. It already happened. Even recently, we had some password breaches, 18 million or billion passwords leaked out. Imagine all that data, which is then giving access to other data. It's not just the password itself, but some of them now they realize it's not just a password, it's the key to the blockchain cryptocurrency. So they get access to Bitcoin or other blockchains. So the data was very private and now suddenly it's leaked out on the internet.
It's true. Now, today we're doing this interview for the Project Management Institute Malta Chapter, so I have to speak about projects as well. I have my lessons learned because we worked together on a critical project where we had to learn a lot about cybersecurity and data privacy. From your perspective, where do you think the biggest gap of data security in projects?
Interesting, yes. So usually when you're working on the project with your own team, you have knowledge of what the team can do and they can ask you questions. But when then you start getting third-party suppliers in the chain, that's, I think, the biggest risk, because the third parties might be not telling you what they're doing exactly, not doing all the tests, not giving you all the information, and that increases the risks of data leakage, sabotage, human error, which are going to compromise always your data or your availability of the data. So the third parties, especially even recently we saw big breaches like the CrowdStrike one, for example, which crippled a lot of systems online. Why? Because the third party got infected with something or had a human error and it infected all the servers which were running that software. The same happened with Cloudflare. They had a breach. you're relying on their service, but if the service is down, then all the other platforms go down as well. So the third parties are important, and you need them because you cannot be an expert of everything. There are some specific services which are already set up, so you don't need to design your own service, but you must make sure that at least these providers that you're using are up to standard. They are following ISO, NIST, or SOC 2 certifications. So at least that you know that they're being audited, that they have documentation in place, policies in place, procedures in place, testing is ongoing, and if there is an incident, they know what to do and how to recover in a timely fashion, not weeks and months, but in a much faster way.
So back to project management. Projects go through phases. So in which phase through the project lifecycle we should consider data privacy, planning, risk management, etc.?
Okay, really it's at all the phases. So from the design or from the first idea, it must start with, okay, what data are we going to use? Where is it sensitive data? Is it company data? Is it very sensitive data, like the health data we mentioned? So is there any data minimization? Are we going to use, for example, live data in all the environments, production, testing, development, or better segregate and having dummy data, manufacturer data, anonymized data, and live data only in the live environments. So these are ideas which need to be drilled in immediately, especially if the project is being subcontracted or if you're being contracted to do it and you're designing the solution. In my case, usually we're designing a solution or we're going to implement a solution. We know, or maybe have partial idea of what data is being used, but we know that it's critical data, and we must consider it immediately. Okay, is the system resilient, redundant? Where is the data stored? Who's taking care of the backups? What antivirus is running on the systems? Is there antivirus everywhere? Is there a perimeter firewall? Are the servers segregated? So all these ideas, they're technical ideas, but they must be considered in the first design, so they know how big the project is going to be. Then it's okay drilling down in the details and buying the equipment or purchasing the cloud services depending on how it's going to be set up. But it's always considering the data, availability, redundancy, integrity of the data, and if are they going to, for example, do data cleanup, the retention. So for how long are we keeping the data? How much data is going to be? Because if it's a small company, maybe they have a few gigabytes of data. But if it goes then into terabytes over years, then you need bigger storage, more costs running, and even recovery. How is the data going to be recovered in case there's a ransomware attack or a system failure and the servers have to be recovered from backups, for example? Is it going to take a day, a week, a month, or even more? Because it's got terabytes of data which has to be recovered. So all these things need to be immediately start to be cleared out. Once you start clearing them out, then you can jump into details of how long it's going to take to set up the solution or develop it and test it, what tools you're going to use for testing, what type of testing. Is it testing on the code or testing on the applications? Ideally, it's both, because one of them is capturing the security at the code level before it's being deployed. The other one is capturing vulnerabilities when it's running on the platform, because you might have a totally different operating system, or one of them is fully updated and the other one is not. So all these affect then the final solution which is being delivered. So even then at the end of the project, before going live, should you have just a go live and that's it? Or should you have a penetration testing to make sure that the solution is secure, accept the results, fix them, and then go live afterwards? Because now the system is at least secure to that point in time. A pen test is just a snapshot at that point in time, how secure you are, because vulnerabilities are always being found. However, keeping them up to date then with the applications and operating systems is going to minimize the risk a lot. At least you know that your system is not unprotected because you left a default password, for example. Because these are things which happen sometimes, you're changing routers, firewall switches, and operating systems, and somebody forgot to reset the administrator password, for example, or the default password which comes in with the devices. So there you have a backdoor which can be used against you. So a pen test is done, and that would be then found and can be remediated before going live and having live data in the solution.
I think I would like to re-emphasize on your advice that data privacy and cybersecurity should be part of the scope of the project, hence should be considered throughout the life cycle. And I'm seeing lots of projects, especially in IT transformation, where the data scope is mainly the data migration, but there is not much of consideration of the data privacy, of testing, even of cybersecurity. But I think this is a very good advice that data privacy should be considered as part of the scope, especially when we're talking about digital transformation, digital software, AI, etc.
Especially if you're considering redundancy or high availability. So it's not just, migrating from some old PC to a new PC and that's it. Because the PC at one point will surely get a hiccup and stop. It could be a power failure, it could be a hardware failure, it could be a virus. So you need to then starting, okay, how much must this be available? 24/7? If yes, then you need a redundant, highly scalable system. How many users are going to be using the solution? How much data is it going to handle? So all these factors then must be incorporated in the design. So are you going to buy 1 server, 5 servers, 20 servers, or a whole cloud infrastructure because it's going to be running into hundreds of servers? Once I was speaking to a hotel director, and he told me they lost everything, for example. And I told him, how is it possible? I know you have some backups or something. Yes, we have backups, but they were 4 months old. So imagine a hotel, which is like a small city, losing all the client information they had, all the residents at that point in time, what they took at the restaurants, bars, and everything, all the bookings, all the stock or what payments they did and which ones they didn't do yet. So all that was suddenly lost. And all they had was an old pen drive lying around somewhere, which they found, and they managed to cover something from that. But really the situation was, okay, you need to think a bit bigger the next time, not just having all the eggs in one basket, and when that basket falls, that's it, you lost everything.
Now I have to be fair with the project managers as well, because it's really not easy to interpret regulation, to understand the risk, to understand what needs to be done. So any advice for project managers on how to collaborate effectively with cybersecurity and data privacy professionals?
Good one. Yes, project managers cannot be experts in everything. And I know even from your experience, at one point you were working on one field and you changed to another field. You don't have the time to learn about all the details or all the technical aspects, but you're always learning, right? So, and I think even for us, it's always changing, always learning. Probably the best thing to do is start with a good meeting, communications, gather your own checklist. So for example, in my case, I like to use the NIST cybersecurity framework or the ISO 27001 as a standard or framework. So I have the controls and they are my baseline. And from there, I can start to identify the issues or identify, okay, how big is the solution? What data are we dealing with? How redundant it must be? Because the ISO framework is helping you to close in those controls. Some of them might not be applicable, but usually most of them are. But it will help you to identify, to ask the right questions and get the information even from the project managers or from the client himself, because these are questions which even I ask, okay, how big is the solution, or how much online it must be. 24/7. Okay, so you cannot have one server, at least two. So you have a failover. But then how many users, how much data, how powerful how many applications is it going to run? Then you start segregating. You cannot have a database running on a domain controller running with a web server. It's bad design. You need to segregate the different layers and having redundancy on all of them. And then you start splitting it up. This is something which, okay, the project manager is not maybe going to understand fully, but if he's asking for help from an expert, the expert or the architect needs to start giving this information and maybe making analogies. Like, having a car, you've got the spare wheel. You don't go out without it. Why? Because you might get a puncture. You don't get a puncture every day, but you still have. And even if you have the spare wheel, probably have the towing service ready as well. Why? In case the car doesn't start and you need somebody to take you back to the mechanic or home. So you always have plan A, B, C in your mind, and these controls help you to, first of all, work in a defense in-depth approach. So it's not protecting the servers or the data by just having a firewall or just having antivirus, but having all the layers in place. So authentication, encryption in place, encryption even in the backups, encryption in transmission and in the databases, then having the firewalls protecting the perimeters like the guards, protecting your entrance and exit, antivirus scanning all the files coming in and out and all the data, monitoring solutions. So if something spikes up or is misbehaving, you can capture it as an alert and start troubleshooting it, having proper procedures and policies in place. So if there's ransomware attack, phishing attack, hardware failure, the technicians know what to do. So it's all defined. At least you have a starting point, and then you can regroup and see what approach. Maybe even having BCP and DR procedures ready. Why? Because if it's a big solution, you need to switch quickly from one site to another, for example. So in 1 hour, everything must be running from site A to site B, so the operations can continue. And this all is defined to help.
Another challenge that we face as project managers is that sometimes stakeholders push back on the time, the cost, the effort needed for data privacy. They push because we don't have the budget, we don't have the timeline. How can a project manager handle the stakeholders in this case?
Okay, it's not easy, I believe, because obviously they're seeing the costs of everything. However, how much it would be more expensive if, for example, the project goes live or the solution that they're delivering goes live, and after a week they have a breach. And all the clients would be complaining, asking for refunds, fines, GDPR fines, and the reputation. So in 1 week you're launching and your product is like an airplane taking off. The second week it's crashing and nobody wants to buy your product or your solution. So I think that is the best scenario which I can come up with to quickly, make them think again. Is it worth skipping, maybe, okay, not doing 10 penetration testing in the final phase, but at least doing one good pen test before going live, for example, keeping it to one pen test every year or two, for example, depending if there's some regulation as well, because now even with DORA, it's required to have for the critical entities the threat-led penetration testing or a red teaming exercise where you have the internal team who are the support or cybersecurity team and another team who is attacking their solutions, and they need to identify what's happening and troubleshoot it and stop it before they can get into the solution. So these are exercises which would help then while the system is running. However, during the design and other phases, development, testing, it's important to always having a security concern about the data. Are we doing the right thing? Are we, for example, implementing encryption in the solution at all the layers? Why? Because when it's live, then it's more difficult to change it. Nowadays, even with quantum computer around the corner. So are we using the right encryption today? Because in a year's time, it might be already outdated. So especially if you're starting with something which is very old, it will be more difficult to change it. It's already almost outdated, and you're launching the product in 2 weeks. What is going to happen? So these are things which need to be considered, kept updated, and tracked by a project manager who can realize, okay, this was mentioned and nothing was done about it. So are we going to launch like that and then change it in 6 months' time, or we're going to tackle it and solve it before launching? Because otherwise then it might be too late.
I always say that project managers should manage risks, not track the risks. Because obviously when you identify the risks, the example that you were going through, you need to identify the impact, but also say, what do we need to do to avoid
Recommendations,
the
mitigations,
issues? Exactly.
change some parts of the solution maybe. Yes, these are things which happen, especially even if you've got solutions which are using third parties. And for example, they tell you that the data is immediately going outside of the EU. Okay, we are in the EU, so it's going against some of the principles possibly of GDPR. Are you going to risk going with that solution, or are you going to change that third party and use something which is EU-based? Or maybe you can raise it with the supplier and they provide an EU instance or tenant.
I want to build on this particular example because if you tell a stakeholder that the data is going outside the EU might not mean a lot, but if you tell them that this will be a breach of XYZ regulations, which might lead to a fine or a stop of operation or whatever, then they would realize how important it is and probably you will get the support that you need.
And it might not be a breach of regulations, but depending first of all on the supplier, what he's going to do with that data. If it's easily accessible for you, because if you require a copy of the data and the data is in the US, it's going to take much more time to get it over. And some of the EU regulations might not allow you to have sensitive data outside of the EU, because then it's under different jurisdiction. In fact, nowadays they're talking about having all the data in the EU, so it's really in your hands almost, because it's all governed by EU policies and regulations. The same goes with DORA, having the resiliency in place, so pushing on, not just having a service running and when there's a hiccup, everything goes down, but even under attack, the system must continue running, having the services split over different areas, over different sites, and switching off the faulty site and continuing with the others.
Is there any impact of the AI coming into the picture on the data privacy landscape?
Yes, of course. AI now is integrated into everything. Even our mobiles now have AI built in, computers having AI applications, even online applications have AI built into it. And we need to always be careful, what are we providing the AI? Are we giving sensitive information? Are we uploading, for example, our medical records to an AI system, which is going to give us a diagnostic, for example? First of all, because AI might not be perfect. It makes mistakes, it has hallucinations, it might give you wrong information, it can give you totally wrong information. So you need to be careful what are you giving to the AI and what it's giving you back. And secondly, even the AI systems are being under attack themselves. So imagine you're uploading sensitive information or a document to AI to give you a summary, for example. I want to know, for example, how many patients came to my hospital this year and how many of them were treated in under 1 hour. You upload the records, let AI crunch on it, and come up with the results. But now that information is in the AI solution. If somebody gets into it, now they have access to that information as well. So you need to be careful what you're giving. Yes, and even the human factor. Is the AI being used to take decisions which affect human lives? For example, are you giving employees wage rise due to their attendance to work, for example? So you dump the question to the AI and the results, oh yes, give Dino the wage rise, but not to Zina because she wasn't present. So AI is deciding, but really it might have made a mistake. Maybe you were working remotely and it didn't count it and it didn't tell you. So these are mistakes which might happen, which need to be reviewed by humans to make sure that the answers provided are legal and correct.
Very good. Finally, I want to close with some advices to project managers, especially when we feel overwhelmed with keeping up with the pace of
With
change.
technology, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not easy, I know. In fact, that's something even my colleagues ask me, how do you keep up to date? What keeps you so energized, you know? And the answer is keeping always the challenge, you know, keep seeing the news, seeing what's happening, filtering out maybe, you know, social media stuff which is not important, but trying to say, okay, this new vulnerability might affect my systems, or this vulnerability might affect that client, so I inform them. I am keeping my hands busy and dirty, you know, trying tools, trying things out all the time. But for project managers, they don't have that time. But keeping a checklist, as I said, maybe finding an Excel sheet on NIST cybersecurity framework. To govern, identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. Even if you use it in your daily life, it's the same. I switch between cybersecurity and karate or self-defense. Why? Because they're both protecting something. One is protecting data, the other one is protecting personal lives, right? They work the same. So identify. What is identify? Identify threats. Identify your assets. What is important to you? The data, privacy, the servers which are running with the data. So you're identifying what is important first. Identifying the threats. Is there something wrong in the street? The same with your life. Identifying the threats in cybersecurity. Malware, criminals, phishing attacks, social engineering attacks. So these are all things which affect the cyber world. Then protect. How can you protect it? In our case, physically, you go to training, you go to gym, you take self-defense classes or karate classes. So you're learning how to protect yourself. In the cyber world, you've got the solutions, firewalls, antivirus, backups, monitoring and logging solutions. So these are things which are going to help you protect. It's an easy mapping out and then realizing, okay, for example, in that project, we used disaster recovery. So why isn't it this one? Isn't it not required? Or we had antivirus there. Why don't we have it here? And it's your checklist then, which you can keep handy and continue. So I govern policies and procedures and oversight, identify, protect, detect, monitoring, logging, alerting to identify issues, you know, performance, capacity, and if something is going haywire, misbehaving, which might mean there is an attack going on, a DDoS attack, malicious network traffic, a virus attacking your solutions. So, and then respond and recover. So you need to make sure you've got the right procedures in place, team in place, knowledge in place. So if there's an attack, there's a malware, there's a hardware issue, the team know what to do. They know we need to replace that part, we need to reinstall the server, we need to recover from backups. How long is it going to take? How will we do it? Because this is something else. The testing. So people might change, but you need to still keep the knowledge to be able to recover your solution even after 10 years, making sure that the backup solutions are kept running and available, because you know software is changing, hardware is changing. So are your tapes or your backup media still usable? Can you still recover from them, or they're now outdated and you need to replace them with something newer? So having something simple like a spreadsheet or a checklist, which can help identify and then get the answers from the experts. Are there backups in place? Ask the team. Is the infrastructure redundant, resilient, blah, blah, blah? Ask the hardware team. And then figuring out if there's something possibly missing.
I like it. So stick to the basic control and
Always.
get advice from the experts.
Yes, yes.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dino. It was great
You're
having
welcome.
you today. Thank you for making the time for this interview.